situated. Good morning. Thank you, Andy. Let's open up our, go ahead and if you've got your schedule on the, what am I thinking of? If you got Blackboard, if you can access it with your mobile device, why don't you go ahead and do that? How many of you use the app, the Blackboard app? Yeah. Okay. It seems to be working pretty well this semester. Is that just my perspective or yours? So, I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. This morning we're going to wrap up Chapter 1. This is Tuesday, January 22nd. Wow, the year's going by really fast, isn't it? Yeah. No, I'm just having fun. What are you talking about? It's only January. Yeah. Because everybody's like, oh my God, life goes by so fast. Well, yeah, I don't know. You got to live it every day. Here we go. So, January 22nd, right? That's today. Everybody good? So you guys have all gone through the grammar PowerPoint, yeah? Okay, helpful? No? Yes? Maybe? Did you go through it? No. You didn't go through it?
No, I saw it, but...
Well, I appreciate the honesty, but go through it.
I saw it.
Well, it's there for you. It's helpful to help you write. It gives great examples of good behavior, not so good behavior. It's going to make a big difference on your grade. It's going to make a big difference on your ability to communicate in the future. You're adults. I'm going to leave that up to you. You got to be curious. It's going to show up on your papers, though. My expectation is we're not going to have incomplete sentences. My expectation is that we're going to know where to place a comma. My expectation is we're going to know to keep things in the proper tense and the proper voice. So it's there for you. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. All right, so Tuesday, that's it. We're going to finish up Chapter 1. I asked you for today to understand the concept of due process. Did you do that? Don't everybody speak at once. All right, last but not least, for Thursday's class, on government agencies. That chapter is very straightforward. There are 3 types of agencies. Can somebody tell me what they are? These are agencies that promulgate regulations that we all have to follow. How many of you sell alcohol? I don't mean individually, I mean at your place of business, right? And who governs the sale of alcohol in the state of Texas? Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission. That's an administrative agency, right? That's an example of federal, state, or local. State, right? The IRS is an example of federal. The Houston Health Department is an example of local, right? Okay, so when you go through this chapter, I want you to understand the difference between federal, state, and local agencies. Yes? I want you to know if they conflict, which one prevails. So if the federal minimum wage is $7.25 and a state raises its minimum wage to $10.25, which one do you have to pay? Don't tell me. Go find out, right? All right. Then there's an exercise in the book that, and I'll have Spencer send it out to you just so that you have it, that it's clear, but I want you to do the exercise before you come to class. Yep. So you need to read the chapter and you need to do the exercise. I'll give you the overview of the exercise. The exercise is you are going to open a hotel, a full-service hotel. And I want you to identify all of the government agencies in a chronological order that you're going to come in contact with, and a brief bullet as to why, right? In other words, IRS, federal, IRS, taxes, right? State, TABC, alcohol. service of alcohol. You see where I'm going? Okay. Federal, DOL, Department of Labor, wage and hour issues. Is that enough? Got direction? See what I want? Okay. Full service hotel. Beginning of class on Thursday. Good question. All right. Everybody good there? All right. So that kind of gets us ahead. Now, next week we're going to start, I'm going to ask you to go out and do an inspection at a restaurant. And it's on the Americans with Disabilities Act. How many of you are familiar with that act? All right. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on that act. That law's been in place for long time. And actually about 26 years now. Is that right? 92? 2018? Yeah. 26 years now. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Yeah. Good to go. Thank you. And I still run into industry people that don't understand the law. So we're going to change that. You guys are going to be disciples. You're going to get it. And wherever you go to work, you're going to make sure that people get it. How's that sound? I like it. All right. So that's going to be an out-of-class assignment where you're going to have to go do an inspection and write up a brief report. In Blackboard, we've had a little trouble pulling over everything from the previous shell. We've got, if you want to look ahead, we've got the assignment and the template for the report into Blackboard. But what we don't have is the grading rubric and the inspection that I want you to do when you do it. So if you go and look for that, you're not going to find it probably until later today, right? But that's not until next week, and then that's just, we're going to assign it, we'll give you time to do the inspection, and then you've got some time to write it up and do the report. But I just wanted to let you know what's coming up. Everybody good with that? All right, very cool. Now, just real quick, you'll notice in the schedule when who's working in career fair? Anybody working in career fair in this class? All right, how many of you are planning on going to career fair? All right, I encourage all of you to go. In this class, what are you guys, sophomores, juniors? Does that sound right? Okay, so you're looking for a job or an internship. Does that sound right? All right, so I'm going to give you the day off to go to career fair, but you got to go. Everybody good with that? Because we're going to check attendance, and that's going to be part of your attendance. Yeah? All right, so just on that day of career fair, during that week, I think it's the week of the 19th of February, you'll see in the schedule, we've got it marked for career fair. I want you to go. Now, there's one other out-of-class assignment that we need to discuss. I want you to go ahead and get it on your calendar. Every year, now in April, we host a hospitality law conference. This year, the conference will be at the Hotel Alessandra in downtown Houston. We will not, it's April 9th and 10th. April 9th is a Tuesday, April 10th is a Wednesday. You'll see it marked on the calendar, on the schedule. We've moved it to this hotel as kind of a favor for an organization that we like, but the space is a little tight. So I'm still working on getting the chairs for you guys built in to the room. But bear with me, I'll figure it out. And we'll talk more about it as time comes. But the expectation is that you will come to the conference and spend at least 2 hours there. You can come either Tuesday from 8:30 to about 5:15, or you can come anytime during that time, or you can come on Wednesday from 8:30 to 12:45. The conference ends at 12:45 on Wednesday. I do that for several reasons. I want you to see a professional conference. number one. Number two, this meeting gathers all of the top attorneys that work for companies like Marriott, Hilton, Wyndham, McDonald's, Brinker, Landry's. They all come and hang out in one place together. And then we have 20 or so private law firms that provide education for them. So it's a great opportunity to kind of see hospitality law in action and see it applied. So if you'll please get that on your calendar. Now, my preference is that you come to the conference. If you cannot make it, I get you've got schedules, you've got things going on, but remember we will not be having class that day, right? So that should help. But I understand you have other class schedules, and you can come down for an hour at one time, an hour at another if it works for you, if that's better. But there's also an alternative assignment if you can't make it to the conference, all right? We also ask you to do a short summary. If you go to the conference, we ask you to draft a short summary of the sessions you listen to. Okay? So that just kind of gives you a little something to think about calendar-wise. Everybody good there? All right. Questions about that? Very cool. How was your weekend? Did you have a question? Dress, no, actually, for this one, you don't have to. Here's the reason why. Because in lieu of a reception, we're all going, not all, I use the word all figuratively, not literally. All of the paying guests are going over to the Yankees-Astros baseball game. And so I've asked them to dress baseball casual. So you guys can dress baseball casual as well. Wear your Astros stuff, you do whatever you want. But, you know, wear pants and, you know, shoes and stuff like that. Yes, Rachel?
Do you have a schedule of the sessions?
I do. If you'll go on to hospitalitylawyerevents.com, or if you just Google Hospitality Law Conference Houston, it should pop up and you'll see the entire agenda. Yeah, great question. Thank you. And the Alessandra is literally just downtown. It's about 7 minutes from campus. Now, the bad news is there's no, usually I can get complimentary parking for you guys, but they don't have parking. They've just got valet. So I can't help you there. But I figure you guys will be creative. Is that fair? Okay. I think you'll enjoy it a lot, and we'll talk more about it as we come forward. But very good questions so far. All right, very good. And now look, on the ADA, you just go find a restaurant. My preference is you find listen to me, you find a full-service restaurant. And I'd rather it be a freestanding restaurant. Do you understand what I mean? So I'd rather you not do Eric's. I'd rather you not do Jack in the Box, Burger King, McDonald's. I would rather you do a Houston's. I would rather you do a Landry's Concept that's freestanding, a Papa's restaurant that's freestanding. In other words, that's not built into a shopping center, that's not in a mall. Yep, that'll give you the total scope of the Americans with Disabilities Act Title III when you do your inspection, right? All right. So Spencer has been working diligently on Turning Point. Since we decided to do it, I think we'll have it up and running and installed and everything as of today, but not today. So he's asked me to pass these sheets around. Would you please sign in your name and let's do it this way. When you sign your name, put number 1. Right? Then when you turn it to Jill, you put number 2 next to yours. 3, 4, 5. Everybody get that? You're going to do the same thing. Okay? And I think that's everybody. There's some on the back. Oh, no, there's not some on the back. How did that happen? Anyway, let's see where we go. I think we can get it done with just the 2. So we'll try that, but that way I don't have to count students. But listen, you only sign in for yourself. Everybody get that? All right. Okay, now, thank you for your name tags. Those of you who don't have a name tag, please make sure you get one for the future. Well, that's not a good sign.
I don't think that's communication.
Thanks, dude. This one. That one. Help if I could read the top. Thank you. So, if you make sure your mobile devices are put away now, and everybody take out a piece of paper and something to write with. Now, I want you to listen very carefully to me about this. If you close the book up, hey, I'd like for you to tell me in 3 sentences what due process is, what you learned about due process. Now listen up. If you didn't do the work, then you need to write on your piece of paper, I am not prepared. Because if you guess, it's going to count 2 absences. If you put I'm not prepared, it's just 1. Do you understand? Everybody on board? I didn't say you had to like it. I just want to make sure you understand it. Okay? Go. You have 2 minutes. Keep your eyes on your own paper, please. All I need is your PeopleSoft number at the top right-hand corner. Yes, ma'am.
It has to be 3 sentences?
Well, I'd rather it not be longer than 3 sentences.
Can it be shorter?
It can be shorter. If you can do it shorter, that's even better. Please turn your paper over when you're finished. There's no talking until we've turned the assignments in, please. Face down, pass them into the center, please. Anthony, would you please pick them up for me? Thank you. How'd we do? Thank you. Careful. Thank you. All right, so it looks like about 30% of you are prepared and about 2/3 are not, which, so you don't feel bad, right? You got company. But here's the thing. We all agreed that we would be prepared, did we not? Was I clear that I expected you to understand due process when you came into the class? Everybody? Right? All right. Is that a fair expectation? Is it a reasonable expectation that you will do the things you say you're going to do? All right. So that's how we're going to demonstrate preparation in here. When I give you an assignment, you either bring it in or I ask you to do it once you're in class. Everybody understand? And you understand the consequences of not being prepared. Clearly in the attendance policy it says it's not enough to be here. You have to be prepared. We don't have exams in here, so my expectation is that you will do the work outside of class and we'll bring it into the class for our discussions. That's how you're going to learn. I have to have a way to measure your engagement, your commitment, and your productivity. Everybody good? Or I can go back to exams. All right, well, if this happens again, we're going back to exams. Everybody on board? All right, so here's what I'm going to do with this. It's a learning day. So those of you that were prepared and got it right, I'm going to give some bonus points to. Those of you that weren't, it's just going to be that were not prepared, it's just going to be a wash, right? We're going to learn from this. Everybody good? Yes. But you understand the consequences going forward. Look, many of you wrote I'm not prepared, and I appreciate that greatly because otherwise you're wasting my time. It's one thing to not be prepared. Please don't compound it by wasting my time and guessing, okay? In the future, when I ask you to do something, if you're not prepared, you just put I'm not prepared. It's one absence. You get 3 free passes, right? Right. But if you guess, it's 2 absences. All right. On board? All right. Somebody tell me what due process is. Yes, Rebecca.
Can you read it?
You can read it.
The due process principle states that the government must respect all of the legal rights that are owed to a person according to the law. Prohibits the state and local government from depriving people of their life, liberty, or property without certain steps being taken.
Very good. Okay. So somebody paraphrase that for me. I thought you had a hand in the back. Remind us your name. Eric.
It's to make sure that the due process to make sure that every legal steps are followed, to make sure we don't infringe or breach on the rights of the person that is involved in whichever case.
Excellent. Excellent recaps. Can somebody give us an example? Natalie. Very good. Perfect example. Do we have rules around how evidence must be acquired? Right? Very good. So, other examples of due process that we have. It's the fair and equal treatment of every person in the United States. If somebody is here, as they say, in an unauthorized way or illegal, are they still entitled to due process? Yes, that's part of what our country stands for, right? Give me some examples of due process. Yes, Juliana. It's close.
A fair trial.
A fair trial. Do you have a right to a jury trial?
Yes.
Okay, what does that mean?
They can't just stick you in jail and then stick you straight to the penitentiary without
Without a trial. right? We don't allow authoritarian power to dictate or to use that power against you arbitrarily. Arbitrarily means on a whim or at their discretion or capriciously, right? Or in a retaliatory fashion. Yeah? Okay, very good. And you're entitled to a jury of your peers. So you're entitled to a jury of people from your community. Now, does that mean you're entitled to a jury of juniors in college? No, but you're entitled to a jury of your peers, people that live, reside, and or work in your community. Yeah? All right. Other examples of due process. Yes, sir, and I'm sorry, I can't see your name. Ron. Oh, yeah, and where's Ben? Ben's over here somewhere. I remember Ron and Ben. Ben didn't show up today? Didn't we have a Ben over here? Never mind. Ron, lay it on us. Laws of double jeopardy would be part of due process. Can you explain double jeopardy? For the same events. In other words, if a jury says, and it was a fair trial, right, and the evidence was presented fairly and the judge facilitated and moderated it, right? If a jury acquits you, in other words, if they find you not guilty, or put another way, they don't find you guilty, the government cannot bring that charge again unless there's additional evidence that comes to light or something was wrong with the trial. Right? Yeah, that precludes authoritarian people from continuing to harass somebody. Right? Okay, very good example. What's another one? Yes. We in the United States, if you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed to you. It may not be the best lawyer, but you're going to have a lawyer. Right? Which is more than you get in most countries. Very good. Other due process. Now this is in the criminal side. Does everybody understand that? If you get in a car accident and you can't afford a lawyer, we're not going to give you one. But I'm going to share something with you in a minute that demonstrates why in the United States we have a system that enables everybody to get the very best lawyer out there in a civil matter. Somebody else had a due process. In the back. Your name is? Alec. Yes, sir. Miranda rights. Can you know them? Have you watched enough CSI? You can tell us? You have the right to? You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one will be appointed to you. Yeah. Basically, you've all heard that, right? Or you've read a book around it. They Mirandize people. I'm Mirandizing you. In other words, I'm making sure that you know your rights. Before the Miranda case, that's where that word came from. There was a case, Miranda versus the United States, and the Supreme Court held that law enforcement has to tell a person their rights before they begin to question them about a potential criminal offense. Otherwise, the information that they're provided from the questioning will be excluded, right? The evidence will not be allowed, right? Same thing with an illegal search and seizure. There has to be probable cause. A police officer just can't pull you over just because and say, okay, I'm going to search your car. Get out of the car. I'm going to search you. They can't do that. Now, if they see you weaving, do they have the right to pull you over? Particularly today because they have video cameras in their car and they can prove that, in fact, you were weaving. Or now they have body cameras and it's there, right? But there has to be what's known as PC, probable cause. Because if they just pull you over on a whim and they smell marijuana and they search your car and they find a lot of marijuana, will the court allow the evidence of that search to come in? No, because there was not probable cause to pull you over in the first place. And a lot of criminal cases get thrown out. Doesn't mean you didn't do it. Doesn't mean you weren't guilty. You just weren't supposed to get caught today. But you did because the police officer didn't provide you a due process. Yes.
So, I have a question.
1 second. Matthew, remind me about contingency fees. Will you just hold on to that thought? Yes.
Whenever, like, if a police officer does pull you over, if you give them permission, like, if they ask you if they can search your car,
Yep.
then...
If you give them consent, if they knock on your door and say, may I come in, and you say yes, whatever's in plain view, they're entitled to see and look at. But they can't go into the back without a search warrant unless you say, yeah, go in the bathroom, go in the back. If there's blood on the floor, you're a goner. Right? But yeah, so if you give permission, that's it. Cindy.
Isn't it the same thing when they go into your door or knock on your house door? They can't come in unless they have a...
Same thing, unless they have a warrant or permission. It's exactly the same thing. Right. Yes, Andrew.
What happens if they say no, like search your car? What happens then?
What happens if they want to search your car and you say no?
But they still feel like it's a case too. Because I know like somebody I know, like they were parked in the garage and they had marijuana in the car, so like the cop went over there was like, can I search your car? Like he was just parked in the garage.
Yeah.
And he said no, but they still...
Depends on how creative the police officer is. If they think they can make a case for probable cause that will stick with the judge, then they can go in and see it. And there's all kinds of ways to do that, right? Did you guys see this thing over in Russia about the Marine that's been detained as a spy? Allegedly, they found a flash drive on him. And the Marine is saying, it wasn't mine and I don't know how it got there. Well, I mean, you got to that. Do people plant evidence? Yeah. And you've got to be mindful of that, right? Have police ever planted guns before at a crime scene? Have they ever planted drugs? All right. So yeah, there's lots of things that go on out there that you need to be mindful of, right? But that's why due process is so important. Yeah? Okay. Another step in due process, if a police officer pulls you over because you're weaving in your car, before they can arrest you for public intoxication or drunk driving, what do they have to do? They issue you a what? Field sobriety test, or when you get to the station, they give you a breathalyzer or you go down. And you have the right to refuse all that. But if you refuse it, if they refuse it, then you give up your license. That's kind of the trade-off that you have today. Does everybody kind of get that? Yeah. All right. So other parts of due process. Can you think of any other examples? If you get arrested, I used to take kids down to Aruba for 6 weeks in the summer, and the first time we went, we were asking kids if they had any question, and one kid says, what if we get arrested? Now, it's not a good question, especially in front of your professor that's taking you down there. What kind of behavior are you going to do that you're going to get arrested, right? I'm not. So anyway, and the kid next to him says, he'll come bail us out. And I thought, well, first of all, I'm licensed in Texas to practice law. I'm not licensed in Aruba. There's not a lawyer around here that is. Second, the bail concept is part of due process. Other countries don't have bail. You get arrested in other countries, you stay there until they decide it's time for you to come out. Do you understand that? So you need to be mindful of that when you travel and you go to other countries. But somebody help us to understand what bail means. This kind of bail is different than a bailment that we're going to talk about. A bailment in the hospitality industry is when I give you I valet park my car with you and you agree to keep it until I come back. That's a bailment relationship. Coat check, hat check, luggage, right? That's called a bailment. This is bail. What does that mean? Sheesh, you just told me. Is it Eric? Thank you. That's right. It's like collateral, right? Does everybody understand what collateral means? And it's not a fine. you get the money back if you show up. So if the judge sets the bail at $10,000, you can put up 10 grand in cash with the court, and if you show up for trial through the end, you get your money back, right? Or you can put up a piece of property to secure your bail, right? It's just guaranteeing that you will show up. Now, we've got bail bond people. That's what normally people use. So if you get a $10,000 bail, the bail bond person will say, if you give me $1,000, I will guarantee the rest, right? But you don't get the $1,000 back. That's how bail bond people make their money. They get paid a percentage of the bail to take the risk that you're going to show up. That's why they come track you down if you don't show up, because they're on the hook for the $9 grand. So if you don't show up, the judge is going to say, where's my $9,000? And the bond person has to pay up unless they can bring you into the court. Yeah? It's a great movie. It was funny. What is it? Bounty Hunter is one, but there's kind of a funny one with Robert De Niro. Midnight Run, I think, is the name of it, where he's a bail bond guy, and he's got to go find this guy, and he tracks him down, and they go back and forth. If you're looking for just kind of a funny movie to watch, it's pretty funny, and you'll understand why bail bond people track people down. Oftentimes, there's a lot of money at stake, right? You got to show up. I think it was bond money. But Bounty Hunter would be a good one to watch. But that's what they do. They go out and find people. If you have a bounty hunter come looking for you, you've done something really wrong. Just so you know. All right. So all good examples of due process. Do you have to be in a criminal situation to get due process? In other words, does the university provide you with due process? If you object to your grade, do you have the right to appeal it? That's due process, right? If you get a parking ticket, do you have some avenues for remedies? Yeah. Down at the city, right? You can go and request a trial. You can go trial before the judge. You can actually get a jury trial. That's due process. If you don't like the outcome of that and you didn't think it was a fair trial, can you appeal that? Yes, you can do that. So those are all fundamental rights people living in the United States have. Now, other rights that we have are granted by the Constitution that might not necessarily be called due process, right? They're outside the concept of due process. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to associate freely. Yeah? Right? That every person has. But all of those rights, including due process, don't necessarily follow you in the workplace. You don't necessarily have freedom of speech in the workplace. We talked about this last week when we were talking about you going out and writing something on social media in violation of the company policy. Do you remember that conversation? Right? So that dilutes your freedom of speech. But you give that up in return for going to work for a company. The courts have ruled that businesses have a reasonable right to restrict speech. Okay? So you need to be mindful that not all of your rights travel with you into the private workspace. Do you have the right to a jury trial for a legal challenge that you want to bring against a company? Maybe it's discrimination, harassment. You do unless you agree to arbitration, to binding arbitration, and waive your right to a jury trial. And many businesses have implemented those waivers. If you want to work for us, you have to sign away your rights. And some states have upheld companies' ability to do that, and some states have ruled against that. Because the right to a jury trial is pretty fundamental in our country. And when you buy a car, you're probably waiving your right to a jury trial in the event you have a problem with the car, because in that 3-page document that you're signing, it probably says you'll agree to arbitration. Right? So be mindful of the things you read, and actually, let's do it this way. Be wary of the things you sign, read them before you sign them, and understand what you're giving away. Now, here's your challenge. If you go to the car dealership and they've got a standard form and it says you waive your right to a jury trial and you agree to binding arbitration, you say, well, I'm not going to sign that. What's the car dealer going to say? Then we're not going to sell you a car. And then it's up to you to decide, right? Probably the same thing with an apartment in some states. Same thing with a gym membership in some states. By the way, don't call me if you sign a year lease and 3 months into it, you don't like your apartment. You signed a 12-month lease, whatever it is. You've got to stay or buy your way out of it according to the terms of the lease. Do agreements matter? When you assign them, you agree to follow through, just like you agreed to be prepared for this class. You've got to learn today. Being an adult means doing the things you say you're going to do. You can't sign up for an apartment tomorrow and the next day find a better one and go, oh, I want to get out of that. It doesn't work that way. You've got to make choices. There are consequences to those choices. It's not like back in high school where one person asked you to the prom and then somebody you really wanted to go with asked you the next day and you call the first person up and go, oh, I'm really sorry, I can't go with you. You can't do that. Well, you can, but there are consequences, right? I got a witness. Some of you did that. But you can't. You've got to understand there are legal consequences, financial consequences to the things you agree to do and sign up or waive. And I want you to be aware of that. Everybody got it? So read things carefully before you sign them. And if you decide you're going to go ahead after reading it, okay, but you're informed about what your rights are. Now, Matthew, I remember. If, let's say, Jill is driving down the street in her Ford. Don't know that you have a Ford. She's got a Ford. And the Ford, she's driving and she goes to hit her brakes and they don't work. And she goes right through a red light and she gets crushed, T-boned. Thank you, Gunnar. She gets T-boned. And Jill is severely injured, goes to the hospital. Now, Jill's family reads in the paper that this was the 18th accident involving Fords in the last 2 years where the brakes failed. So they think, there's something wrong with these cars, right? It's what we call a manufacturer's defect, right? Now, Jill's getting sued by whom? The other person, because she ran the red light, right? So she's got to deal with that. But who's going to help her deal with that? Who's going to give her a lawyer for that? Her insurance company. One of the key benefits you get from having insurance is they will provide you with a defense. Why? Yeah, because it's their best interest to give you defense. Because if Jill loses, who has to pay? The insurance company, right? So in that case, Jill's going to get injured. But in the case against Ford, the insurance company may say, we're not going to pursue that claim, right? We're okay paying out here. We don't want to pursue it. Or they may say, yes, listen, we think you have a viable claim. We're also going to hire a counsel to pursue Ford to recover our damages. But if you want anything over what we're trying to get, you have to hire your own attorney. And you want to. Now, hold on. In the back, your name is Alec. What do you got?
With this example, since you already said 80 people, how would that work with like a class action lawsuit?
federal law has not restricted class actions in the space. And if there's a lawyer that's savvy enough to gather all the people together to file a class action, then yeah, you could probably do a class action. But there are pros and cons to class actions, right? Sometimes it's better to have individual cases. Typically what happens when you have situations like this, you've got 18 different lawyers representing them, and they can't agree on bringing a class action. But they will agree on the order of the cases, and they'll typically have the worst case, their best case, the worst victim, go to trial first. So it sends a message to Ford that says, hey, we're serious about this. There's a lot of money at stake. You need to settle the others. Well, but if Ford wins, it's bad for everybody else. See how that works? All right, but back to this. So now Jill decides, I want to pursue my rights against Ford. And Jill, I'm just using you as an example if you don't mind. But let's say Jill's family doesn't have the money to hire a lawyer. Who is Ford going to hire if Jill sues them for faulty brakes? They're going to hire the best lawyer and law firm in the world, right, to defend them, because they know if they lose Jill's case, how many other lawsuits are going to be right behind it? A bunch. And they're trying to avoid recalling 1 million cars because that's expensive, right? So, so Jill's family does, it's $700 an hour, $500 an hour for top legal counsel. And a case like this could take 300 hours. Can you do the math? Just figured it's a lot of dough. It's well in $300,000 range. To bring a case like this, you've got to hire an expert to reconstruct the accident. You've got to hire an expert testify that the brakes, if they found that the brakes were faulty, they've got to go inspect it. You've got to take depositions, which are sworn statements of the people that work at Ford, the other accidents of Jill. You've got to get her doctor's records, right, to prove that. You've got to get her employment records to show her lost wages. And you've got to get an economist to testify about how the injury is going to impact her future earning capacity. You've got to get a rehabilitation expert to testify about all the pain and suffering she's going to have because of the injuries in her life, right? Those people don't come free. They all cost a lot of money. And Jill's family doesn't have the money. Ford's going to have all that. They can afford to pay for it, or their insurance company will. But Jill and her family, they don't. So that's why we have what's known as the contingency fee agreement. So that a lawyer, Jill's family can go to a lawyer who's well-versed in personal injury trial, and they can hire that attorney, and that attorney will agree to, if they like the case, if they think it's viable, they will say to Jill and her family, we will take the case, we will front the expenses. In other words, we will pay for the experts. We will pay for the deposition time. Last case I had before I actually got out of practicing law, we had over $200,000 in, maybe $300,000 in the case before it finally went to trial. And if we had lost, we were out the money, right? And some of these accident cases, you can have $500,000 or $1 million in the case before it goes to trial. Now, that's extreme, but it could happen, right? And so, and they'll say, but we get our, if we win and the jury awards damages, we get our expenses back first. So if we put $300,000 in it, that comes off. If you get $1 million verdict, right? We get the first $300,000 to pay back the expenses, right? And then we receive a third of the remaining money, which of $700,000 would be close to 200 and what? 245 something, 235,000 for the legal fees, and then Jill, you get the balance. So Jill would walk away with $450,000 on $1 million verdict. If it took $300,000 in expenses, right? The third. But that's how it works. And that enables Jill and her family to get the very best representation, just like Ford does. Right? If you're in other countries, you have to pay for your lawyer up front. And that precludes a lot of people from getting justice. Now, can that process be abused? Any process can be abused, and sadly, some lawyers abuse that process. Right? They'll go out and find people and say, hey, you need to trip and fall and get hurt, and then you hire me. Do you see? That kind of thing goes on. Or in the workplace, people will fake an injury, and then there are chiropractors and lawyers that work together to say, oh yeah, this guy's hurt. Right? And then they go and they try to collect workers' compensation claims. Yeah? So don't be naive, but on the other hand, be grateful that you live in a country where you can get the best representation in the world just like anybody else can. Be grateful that you live in a country where you are entitled to due process. Is it perfect? Clearly not. But it's better than other countries that I'm familiar with. Do you see that? And do you understand due process? Okay. Well, now if you understand due process, let's go back to the chapter in the book where it talks about the judicial system in the United States. Somebody give me a little overview of that. Don't everybody speak at once. Do you see the chart in the book? Yes. What page is it on? 4. Page 4 in the new edition. If you don't have a book, get with somebody that does, or if you have your book online, go ahead and pop it open. Even through a computer. Just be sure you're on that. And may I see that for just a minute? I just want to hold it up so everybody can see it. Thank you. Does everybody see? That's the chart we're looking for. You got it? The very top, it's the Supreme Court. Now, just like, well, yes, sir, in the back with your laptop open. Explain the chart to me. Okay. Eric, you got it? What? Is it slow because everybody's logging in at once? What's up with that? It's a race. Okay? Amanda, tell us what you see there.
It starts off with the Supreme Court of the United States, and then it splits it up into the federal system and the state system.
Very important to think about. You've got the Supreme Court of the U.S., and then you have the federal system and the state system. Each state has a judicial system. The federal government has a judicial system. Judicial means courts, right? A court system. A system to interpret laws and to resolve disputes and to prosecute crimes. Okay? Very good. What types of courts are on the federal side?
Goes the Court of Appeals, and that's split up into 3 different portions. The federal administrative agencies, the district courts, and other specialized federal courts.
Like bankruptcy would be an example of a specialized federal court. All right? Bankruptcy courts only exist at the federal level. The only bankruptcy law we have in the U.S. is federal law. So if you're going to file bankruptcy at some point, that is going to be done in the federal bankruptcy court, right? That's called jurisdiction. That court has the power and the authority to hear bankruptcy cases, right? Now you can have criminal courts and civil courts, right? courts that focus on criminal cases and courts that focus on civil matters. What's the difference between a criminal case and a civil case? Cindy?
Criminal case is like you shoot somebody.
That's true. A crime has been committed. But can you distinguish it a little further? Gunnar?
Wouldn't a criminal case be involving any law being broken or not made, and like a civil case would just be a dispute between two people?
It very well could be a dispute between two people, a car accident, a dispute over a contract, two businesses arguing over intellectual property, right? Those are all civil matters. A dispute over a lease or the sale of property. Civil matters. A dispute over sexual harassment. A dispute over discrimination. Civil matters. A divorce. Civil matter. An adoption. Civil matter. Right? But the real distinction between civil and criminal, because a civil matter can occur around a law being broken, right? If a bar serves somebody that's under the age of 21, did they break the law? They did. And if I bring a lawsuit against them for that, is that a civil matter or a criminal matter? Civil, right? If I bring it. But here's the thing. If they get a ticket for serving under 21 by the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission, in addition to the civil suit, who's going to prosecute that ticket against them? The district attorney or the state attorney general's office, right? That makes it a criminal matter. So the distinction is, almost always when the government is prosecuting the case, bringing the action, it's a criminal matter. Now, I say almost always because governments get involved in civil disputes as well. Eminent domain. What is eminent domain? It's when the government wants to take your property. They're going to put a highway through, or they need to build a dam, right? Or they need to build a prison. Governments have things they need to do, and if they can go to court with due process and demonstrate the value of the property, and they're going to pay you fair value for it, and a judge says yes, right? And the appellate court says yes, everything was done properly, then the court can force you to sell your property to the government. That's eminent domain. There's not any criminal aspect to that, right? That's a civil dispute. Criminal aspect occurs when there's either jail time or a fine that can be assessed. We don't let private citizens prosecute or assess jail time or fines. Only a government entity that's charged with providing due process can do that. Got it? Yeah? So if you get charged, if you drive drunk and you run somebody over, they're going to sue you, right? Civil. They're going to sue you in civil court. And who's going to represent you in that case? If you have insurance, who's going to represent you? Your insurance company is going to appoint a lawyer to represent you. That's why it's a requirement in Texas that everybody have insurance, among other reasons, right? It used to not be that way before you guys were born. People didn't have insurance. They'd go out and get drunk, run somebody down, and then the person that got run down, what was their remedy? Hello? Find a lawyer. But to do what? You can sue the drunk, but they're in jail and they don't have any money. Back then, you couldn't sue the bar. There was no dram shop recovery back then. So who ultimately had to pay for the victim? The victim and you, taxpayers, ultimately had to pay for them. Well, right? We're just not going to let them lay on the side of the road. They're going to go to the hospital. If they can't afford their own or they don't have insurance, they're going to go to the county hospital. And who pays for that? You do. Don't sugarcoat it. Own it. That's why the health insurance conversation is so important. If somebody doesn't have health insurance, who has to pay for it? You do. Don't say taxpayer like it's some third party. It's you. Sheesh. Now, if you run that person over because you're drunk, is the state just going to look away? What are they going to charge you with? Manslaughter. Involuntary manslaughter. Did you intend to kill him? No, I was drunk. But you killed him nonetheless. Yeah. So, dude, you're going to jail. What? How can I go to jail? Because you behaved in a way that society deems inappropriate, and you fit the bill for an involuntary manslaughter crime. You were drunk. You were reckless. By your behavior, somebody died. You caused that death. So in addition to being sued civilly, you're also going to be charged with what? Manslaughter, which is a criminal offense. And who's going to bring that case against you? The government. You see the difference? Now, let's go back to the civil case. Let's say you request a jury trial. This is probably going to be 3 or 4 years after the accident. That's how long it takes to wind its way through the judicial system. You're going to go to trial. And the jury comes back and awards $10 million in damages against you. Right? But your insurance, but you only got $1 million worth of insurance company. It gets really complicated here. But your insurance company says, whoa, whoa, whoa. The judge made several mistakes in the trial, so we are going to appeal this to a court of appeals. Our right to due process. We don't think this judge was fair or equitable, so we are going to appeal it to a different court, a higher court. And that court reviews all of the evidence that was presented. They review the trial testimony, they review the exhibits, they look at the jury decision, they look at the instructions the judge made. All of that is presented at the Court of Appeals, and they decide whether or not the court made a mistake. And the Court of Appeals can affirm the decision of the jury, or they can overturn the decision of the jury, or they can remand it for a new trial with these changes in the judge's instructions or the way the trial was handled. Right? If you don't like the decision from the Court of Appeals, typically there's one higher level court. In the United States, there's the Supreme Court. Right? In Texas, we have the Supreme Court for civil cases. We have our own Supreme Court, as each state does. Right? So that's how you track through the court system in states and in the U.S. court system. Right? But it's all about due process and fairness. Now, something you need to think about as you go forward in your life and you get more engaged in, I hope, making decisions about who's going to represent you and who's going to sit on courts, is that how do we select judges? Can you see why that might be important? In other words, would you want to go into court on a case where you knew the other side had donated a lot of money to the judge for their campaign? Right? But you could have donated, but you chose not to. Or you didn't have the money to do it. But that's what goes on in Texas courts. People can make campaign contributions either through their lawyer or as a business or as an individual, not a business, but as an individual, and then they can appear before that judge. And then the judges say, well, it doesn't impact my decision. Bullshit. I always want to tell them, dude, are you from Texas? They go, well, I was born and raised in Texas. Well, so was I, and good. And that means we both understand bullshit when we hear it, right? But that's something you've got to think about. And that's why elections matter. Because you vote for judges. And you vote for people that make laws. And you've got to realize that. And you need to get engaged. I don't care what your political spectrum is. That's up to you. But I encourage you to get engaged. All right. Questions about due process? Anything? Nothing? You got it? You got it figured out? Now if I asked you to write down what due process meant, could you do it? Could you give me examples? Okay. Did we learn from this? Do you understand the level of thinking and understanding I want you to have when you come into the room? All right. Now, Spencer will send you a note to make sure you identify the exercise. But is everybody having a foundational understanding of what I'm expecting you to bring with you on Thursday morning after you read the chapter? This is chapter 2. You're going to read the chapter. You're going to understand the difference between the 3 levels of administrative law. And you're going to, on a piece of paper, you're going to identify all 3 levels that you will interact with if you were to develop and build a hotel, and let's make it easy, in downtown Houston. Okay? Federal, state, local, regulatory, administrative agencies that you will interact with and why for developing and building a hotel. Oh, wait. Strike that. I don't mean strike. Develop, build, and operate a hotel in downtown Houston. Full service hotel. Does everybody understand what I mean by full service? You have food and beverage in the hotel. Okay, that's important. Questions about that? All right, so when you, I know I asked for questions. One more thought, and this might answer your question. When you come to class on Thursday, I want to see that. No more than 1 page. PeopleSoft number, top right-hand corner, no name on your paper. You need to bring 2 copies. 1 to give to me, 1 to keep as a reference for our discussion for the class. Everybody? Okay. Please don't email it to me. Bring it with you. Okay. Raven, you had a thought or question.
Just how long the paper had to be.
Thank you. I'd prefer no longer than 1 page. If it bleeds over a bit, put it on the back. Okay? But be mindful. Prioritize. I want you to think. I don't want you to just go crazy. Right? Make it something that I can look at it at a glance and recognize that you get it. Right? You can do it in different colors if you want to. Federal, state, and local. Different fonts. Whatever works to identify, and you can demonstrate to me that you have a keen understanding of these agencies and what they do. Right? I'm sorry, there were some more questions over here. Camille, did I answer yours?
It just doesn't need to be typed.
No, it does not need to be typed.
Can we type it?
You can type it, but it does not need to be typed as long as I can read it. In other words, I would have to type it. Can't read my writing. Good question. Anybody else in the back? Yes, Alec.
Do you want this from the standpoint that this is like an independent brand-new hotel or coming from a agency?
That's such a great question, but let me think that through for just a minute. Alec asked, is this an independent hotel or is it a brand? What I'm thinking about is, does it matter? It's a great question, but keep in mind, I'm not looking for, oh, you know what? That's a good question because of the potential for franchising or something like that, and then you get into the, that's a very good question. Let's make it a franchised hotel. Does everybody understand what that means?
Yeah.
That means you went to Marriott and you paid them money for one of their brands. Or you went to Hilton, or you went to IHG so you could have the Holiday Inn flag on your hotel. Everybody get it? Franchised hotel. Great question. Anybody else? Yes, Arish. I'd prefer bullet rather than paragraph form. Okay? And look, don't let my 1-page imitation keep you from doing a thorough assignment. but don't do more than front and back. I want to give you leeway, but at the same time, I want you to prioritize and give me the most important ones. Fair enough? But I also want you to be thorough, so you've got to balance that, right? You've got to make assessments on what's important. Okay, very good. Yes, ma'am. Arista.
You said you wanted it listed chronologically. Did you want it listed chronologically within each?
Segment. Development. Construction. Operations. And then you should have federal, state, and local in each one of those, right? Okay. So you could set it up just like an outline. A three-tier outline, yeah? A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. You could do it that way. That'd probably be easy. Easier.
And it's just how we would interact with all those and like building, operating.
That's right. Yeah. So in other words, on the development side, give me an example of a federal agency you might have to come in contact with.
And that'll be in the book.
It's in the book, in the chapter. Yeah, once you read the chapter, you'll have, and you can also reach outside the book. You can go to Google to get a deeper dive into any of these agencies. But give me an example of an agency federal agency that you'd have to go out to when you're thinking about developing a hotel. Alcohol beverage is not federal. Alcohol Beverage Commission is state. ATF is federal, but you need to be able to distinguish that. So that's a great point. The Land Commission is state, but what about the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, right? You need to be sure that what you're planning on putting there is not going to violate that, or was there a gas station there before, right? Does the soil have to be remediated if you're going to have a place of public accommodation there? Give me an example of a state regulatory agency in the development side. Alcohol beverage, possibly. If you want to put in a full-service hotel and serve alcohol, can you put that just anywhere? Where you got to be a certain distance from schools or a certain distance from a church. Yeah, you've got to know that. Very good. What's a local regulatory agency for a hotel in downtown Houston? Well, municipal what? Zoning. Is it zoned for a hotel? Now you're in Houston, so yeah. But there are some restrictions that you may need to follow. In other words, or does it have a landmark designation? Right? Is the property you're taking over a conversion? Does it have a landmark designation? It does. There's only certain things you can do. Can you do your feasibility study to make money given the restriction on the changes you can do? Perhaps you can't add a sufficient number of hotel rooms to make a sufficient ROI. What's ROI? Return on investment for that project, right? You see why this matters. Now, what you should see is you should see an expanding list. The development, you're not going to have that many, right? Construction, you're not going to have that many. Operations, you're going to have a lot. So don't freak if you only have a few in the first couple. I don't expect you to know every agency for those, but give me the big ones for the development and the construction. The operations is really where I want to see your understanding. Everybody good? And of course, you can email me if you have other questions, or Spencer. Van?
So, for example, if you have a matter related to food and beverage, then it will be under state and federal. So we have to identify the agency for state and federal for just one matter.
That's right. And it would be, you'd have maybe one for food and maybe one for beverages, alcohol beverages, right? Non-alcoholic beverages are typically under food. You've got your sanitation, your health departments, right? You've got federal health codes, you've got state health codes, sometimes you get municipal health codes. You got to comply with them all. Eric? Sure, go ahead. I said you need to find that out. It's in the chapter. You'll know. Where are you from? Very good. We'll see if it's the same in France or the same here. More than likely the same. Natalie.
So then,
Hold on, guys.
on Thursday morning, besides turning in the exercises, we also have to do the
That's right. Uh-huh. Yep. With your post, right? For chapter 2. Everybody understand? Got a point? Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Carmen. The team what? Oh, for chapter 1. Thank you for bringing that up. We skipped that because we were just trying to get ourselves ready and organized, right? And we went ahead and had the conversation in class. Yes. Thank you for that. So sorry for the confusion. I thought I made that clear. We were skipping the team 1 for number 1, and we're going on to number 2, which is, you guys have your teams, right? So when you come into class for team 2, you're going to get in your teams. You'll be ready to go. Everybody good? Are you sitting in your teams now? Okay. That's what I thought. Hey, wait. I need the attendance sheet. Who's got it? Did everybody sign it? Hold on. Who did not sign the attendance sheet? Who did not sign the attendance sheet? Somebody over here? Who? Well, dude, come sign it.
I hate to be this person.
What person is that?
Well, I know that